Should you rent or should you buy? Another classic question that has huge financial implications. Hey everyone, I'm James Bashel, Chief Operating Officer and Financial Advisor at NerdWallet Wealth Partners, and today I'll take you through a fictional scenario that lays out some of the options you could explore if you're asking yourself this question. And if you're facing financial questions like this, click on the link in the description to learn more about how NerdWallet Wealth Partners might be able to help. Okay, so let's dig into this rent or buy question by walking through an example. Mary and John Dink are a dual income couple from Los Angeles with no kids. Mary is 34 and works in tech as a staff engineer. John is 35, works as an assistant producer in the film industry. They're married, they love their Beachwood County neighborhood, and they've lived in the same 2-bed, 2-bath apartment since 2021. Combined, they have an annual income of about $500,000, and they're extremely disciplined when it comes to their finances. They max out their 401ks, they save their bonuses, and contribute monthly to a taxable investment account. They also carve out $15,000 a year for travel because travel is one of the things they love most in life. Typically, they use that travel budget on one big exotic trip per year. But a debate has sprung up. Currently, Mary and John are renting, but they know they eventually want to buy a forever home. They believe they'll be ready for that in about 5 years. The question is what they should do in the meantime. Ideally, they'd like to upgrade their living situation, but should they? What options do they have? 1, they could stay where they are until they can afford their forever home. 2, they could upgrade to a nicer rental. Or 3, they could buy a starter house and sell it later when they're ready for the forever home. When we compare financial decisions like this, the key is to look at differential cash flows, which is just another way of saying that we need to figure out what changes financially between each situation. We have one fixed outcome, a forever home down the road. We have to lay out what would happen financially for Mary and John in the next 5 to 7 years, depending on which choice they make, to rent or to buy. Renting is simpler. The costs are largely known. They have to pay rent, which will likely increase incrementally over time, pay for renter's insurance, and likely pay a broker's fee if they decide to move to a different rental. One other bonus of renting is there's no need for a down payment, which means they could invest what they would have used for a down payment in a high-yield savings account or the stock market and potentially earn some interest on that money. With buying, things get more complex. They would have a down payment, let's assume 20%, plus closing costs, ongoing costs like mortgage, interest, property taxes, insurance, maintenance, and when they sell in a few years, they'll most likely have to pay another 6 to 10% of the home's value in selling costs. To figure out what's right for Mary and John, we have to actually look at the numbers. We know the following. Income, just under $500,000 a year. Expenses outside of housing, about $7,500 per month. Current rental cost, $4,600 per month. Travel, $15,000 per year. Long-term goal is to retire with $9,000 per month in spending, plus $30,000 for annual travel until age 85. So how would those numbers change based on some of the options we laid out earlier, plus a few bonus options? When planning for them, we want to keep a few things in mind. We want to have a probability of success. Because Mary and John are young, aiming for a roughly 70% chance of hitting retirement goals is reasonable. Life will change and they'll have time to adapt. We also want to help them understand opportunity cost. Buying provides stability and allows them to begin building equity, but ties up the cash. Renting gives flexibility and liquidity, but no equity. And lastly, we want to make sure we're offering flexibility. For millennials, and likely the generations that are coming up after them, optionality often ranks higher than owning early. For Mary and John, a strong investment portfolio plus no kids gives them more room to adjust if life shifts. Let's dive into their financial plan. We're comparing the rent versus buy option, and we have some placeholder goals here which will allow us to run that differential cash flow analysis between the different scenarios. The first is a primary home relocation right now, which is potential starter home purchase. So this is the scenario in which they buy a home today and then sell that one in 5 years to move into their forever home. Alternatively, they could upgrade their rental today to a more expensive rental. Remember, their current rental is $4,600. they want to rent at $6,500. Using an online tool, we've managed to equate these two living environments to each other. Remember, the primary decision here was how to upgrade their living environment, and we want to directly compare the living environment of the rent versus buy decision. So in Beechwood Canyon in LA, a $1.5 million home will cost you about $6,500 in rental on a monthly basis. Across all of these scenarios, the 5-year goal is the same. They're going to move into their forever home, which will cost them about $1.75 million. What the system then does is it runs a Monte Carlo simulation, which is in essence 1,000 iterations of what the future could look like, from the best of the best to the worst of the worst, varying each of those inputs by the variables which are most going to change the future from a financial perspective. Those are going to be investment returns, tax rates, healthcare costs, and very importantly, inflation. So let's have a look at how these all panned out. We start by looking at the baseline. So the baseline is where we currently are today. And that baseline is rent your current apartment as it is, don't upgrade your living scenario, and buy that forever home as planned in 2031 or 5 years' time. As stated before, we're aiming for a probability of success in the region of 70%, so 65 to 70%. So that 67% of their current plan shakes out as follows. So they're retiring at 60 and 61 respectively. From a calendar year perspective, Mary is 1 year younger than John. They're now retiring the same calendar year. They're spending $15,000 on pre-retirement travel as planned. Retirement monthly expenditure is actually slightly higher than what they planned. So they can actually spend $9,500 a month with that $30,000 a month travel budget. Today, they're able to spend $8,000, not just the $7,500 they had as their current expenses, which is important because it creates a little bit of padding if they were to be slightly undercounting their expenditure. So let's compare how this shakes up relative to the options we have. What if they buy the starter home in 2026 to upgrade their current living environment and then sell that in 2031 and buy their forever home? Aiming at that same 67% success, the variables are going to have shifted slightly. Let's have a look. So we're able to get them to retire at the same age or at the same calendar year. However, it's going to cost them a bit on their monthly expenditure, and it's going to cost them a bit in terms of their current lifestyle. So on the whole, if they were to buy a starter home this year, as opposed to just buying the home in 2031, they're about $500 a month out of pocket from now all the way until the end of their plan. Let's compare that to the alternative. So the second scenario we had was upgrading their rental in 2026 and buying that forever home in 2031. When we look at that, we can once again get to that same probability of success of 67%, but we've moved the variables around a bit. In this case, we can get them to 60 and 61 respectively, the same thing. The retirement monthly expenditure is the same, okay, at $9,000. And importantly, they're actually able to spend slightly more today, about $400 a month, which is amazing. So essentially, by renting instead of buying the starter home, they've freed up about $400 a month for the next 5 years, which they can now spend on whatever they want to spend it on. However, that security of the forever home or the temporary home en route to the forever home is a slightly different values adjusted decision. Let's throw something else in the mix here. What if they upgrade their rental in 2026 and actually never buy the home in 2031? And this is where the scenario planning gets really fun. So we're manufacturing that same probability of success in the future, but our variables have changed quite substantially. We've gone from a retirement age of 60 and 61 respectively down to 57 and 58. So we've saved them 3 years through not actually buying that home in Los Angeles in 2031. Further, we freed up another $1,000 a month for their travel budget. So we can see how through manufacturing that success rate, we've actually freed up some cash to spend as they will in line with their values, their primary interest being travel. Let's run one last scenario, which is what if they never upgraded from their current rental? What if they just stayed where they are, kept their housing as it is, but expanded their life outside of their housing? Well, this is going to produce different variables again. So we get that same probability of success. However, we can now retire 5 years earlier for both of them. and keep all of the other variables the same. So in essence, through never buying property, they've bought themselves quite a lot of time. This becomes an important trade-off. How important is the personal security of home ownership versus the freedom of potentially retiring sooner? And only an individual can answer that for themselves, which is where this beauty of the financial plan comes in that we can track each of these scenarios and really start to value in dollars and cents what is the trade-off between the different variables we have at play. So bottom line, what should Mary and John decide? How should other dual income, no kids households make the rent versus buy decision? It's not about math alone. Choosing the right financial plan comes back to values. Is it more important to have the stability of home ownership now, or the freedom and flexibility of renting a little longer? With the options and the math laid out in black and white, you can see the trade-offs much clearer. And remember, you can have almost anything, but you can't have everything. The key is to align your money with the life you want. So what are you picking? Rent or buy? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you're looking for help with your own financial plan, be sure to click the link in the description. If you enjoyed this video and would like to see more content like it, subscribe to the channel and follow along.